When I was a kid, we used to play a game called King of the Castle. I'm sure you did too. The snowplow would plow all the snow around our school into one big mountain of a pile. It was snow, but it was pretty hard-packed snow. It was the best place to play King of the Castle. There were no rules. You just climb up to the top of the hill and knock the other kid off. And then you could proclaim, "I'm the king of the castle and you're the dirty rascal," until someone knocked you off. Well, here, they played King of the Castle for real. Today we're going to the border of Bowdon and Dunham Massey in the historic county of Cheshire. It's now part of Greater Manchester, but perhaps for the purposes of today's video, we should call it the Kingdom of Mercia. We're going back to a date that every English-speaking school child knows, 1066. It's a round one question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The Battle of Hastings. It only lasted one day, but the Norman conquest of England lasted for many years after that event. When you think of England, one of the first things that come to mind is castles. It's not something you usually associate with Manchester though, but there were castles all over England's landscape during the Norman conquest. And just over here is the site of one of Greater Manchester's castles. Watch Hill Castle. It's the only scheduled ancient monument in Trafford. It doesn't look like much today, but you need to know what you're looking for. This was the site of a Motte and Bailey castle owned by Bowdon and Dunham Massey. Motte and Bailey castles were usually made of wood, so it's no surprise that nearly 1,000 years later there's not much left of it. I'm sure you know what a castle is, but what's a Motte and Bailey? Let's pop back to the shed for a minute. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Here it is, the Motte and Bailey Castle. It was introduced to this country by William the Conqueror. A Motte and Bailey castle was made up of two structures. A motte, a type of mound, often artificial, topped with a wooden or stone structure known as a keep, and at least one bailey, a fortified enclosure built next to the motte. Okay, here we are, Watch Hill Castle, or Motte and Bailey Castle, alongside the River Bowdon here, snaking through the land. And here's the A56 Dunham Road and the Bowdon roundabout. And this is what this castle was all about. It was to watch and guard this river crossing. So let's switch to LiDAR so we can see the topography of the land. There we go, some kind of magic voodoo that they do with lasers that they shoot at the ground so you can see the topography of the land. So here you can see the River Bowdon has cut out this piece of land here. So this is all raised land, a raised triangular promontory here. And this is the Eye Brook, the ravine cut out by the Eye Brook. And here you can clearly see the raised motte and the moat between the motte and the bailey. Now this field has been plowed over many times over the centuries, and you can't really see the moat that would protect the bailey, but it may be here. There's a slight shadow here, so this may have been the moat to protect the bailey. So these nice even steps make it a little easier to get from the Bowdon up to where the bailey would have been. But now I would have been met by a palisade and probably people shooting arrows and stuff at me. So I think I'm dead. The first line of defense is the ditch or moat. Watch Hill has a natural ravine and river valley. They would have deepened and widened these as they saw fit and added extras where needed, and then put that soil on top of the motte to make it higher. The entire site is enclosed behind a huge fence called a palisade. They were usually around 12 to 14 feet high. There'd be some sort of gatehouse with a drawbridge that could be pulled up in the event of a siege. This bit with the houses and such is the bailey. This is where the support staff would be, you know, your butcher and baker and candlestick maker. Well, maybe. But they'd certainly need someone to make food and a smithy to fix and make weapons and tools. A chapel was a common thing inside a bailey, all the things needed for everyday life. We're on a raised triangular section of land here now. We're at the fat end of the triangle, and this would have been the bailey. On the other end, at the pointy end of the triangle, there would have been the motte. And on top of the motte, of course, is the tower with all the big guys stay there. But out here would have been the normal people. But there still would have been fortifications here. There would have been a ditch and a palisade. And in here, the normal people would stay, and they would make provisions for the guys, the big guys in the castle, the keep on top of the motte. There's the river over there, and you can see this whole section where the bailey would have been is up there. It's quite a height. I mean, that's probably getting close to 40-50 feet high now. That's quite a thing to run up if somebody's throwing stuff at you. It's a thing to run up and try and attack someone afterwards anyway, but if somebody's throwing stuff at you, it makes for a pretty difficult attack. The next line of defense was the motte, an even higher piece of ground. Like the bailey, surrounded by a moat and palisade, with another gatehouse and drawbridge. Finally, the castle, or keep. Everybody could rush in here if they were attacked. Here they could mount a very strong defense. That would be the Bowdon behind me now, and here we have another stream on the other side. This would be the tip of that triangular section of land between the Bowdon and this stream carved out the other side. So it's made a raised section of land between the two rivers, streams, and this would be the motte. Yeah, and this is all swampy land here. You wouldn't want to cross that. You get across this and then you fight. Yeah. So it really doesn't show well on camera, the height of this thing. This countryside wouldn't have as many trees as it does today. What trees there were would have been used for the castle and the palisade. They needed a clear line of sight to the A56, the old Roman road where it crosses the River Bowdon. This castle would have guarded the river crossing of the road from Chester to Manchester. It was the entrance to the barony of Hacienda de Massey. Yeah, it's a long way down to the river. You can't really attack from this end. And on the other side, we have that swamp. So yeah, it's well defended. And you can see there's a ditch here between the motte and the bailey. Difficult to make out on camera. It's not an incredible height, but it is when you have to run up it and fight someone at the end. And you can see a little depression here as well, which probably would have been the entry. It may have been a drawbridge to enter the motte, the keep at the top of the motte. So over there is the green field that I was at, speaking about the bailey. There's no way you're coming up here easily. These lands belonged to Hacienda de Massey. He took over from the Saxon Thane Aylward after 1066. Perhaps he was at the Battle of Hastings and given these lands by William the Conqueror. William was going to take all of England, and he gave land and territories to trusted men to own and defend in his name. There's never been a proper excavation of this site. A chance discovery in the early 19th century of a silver penny dated to the reign of Henry II was found in a rabbit hole on top of the motte. That could support a construction date. There was a rebellion of certain barons against Henry II in 1173 that included Hacienda de Massey. It may have been built during that conflict, or it may have been built earlier and still occupied during this period. Are you digging in that ancient scheduled monument? No, I was walking my dog and he went down this rabbit hole here. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket. Yeah. and I reached in to get them, and I found this coin. Yeah, that's the ticket, yeah. The Church of St. Mary the Virgin in Bowdon. There's probably been a church here since the 7th century. The Domesday Book tells us that at the time there was a mill, a church, and a parish priest. In the year 1100, a stone church was built here in the Norman style. This effigy was uncovered from under a pillar in the nave when the church was rebuilt. The right arm across the body with the outline and point of his sword just visible may indicate he was a knight in service to the king. If it's not the Hacienda de Massey, it's likely one of his descendants. It's certainly one of his crew. The name of Hacienda de Massey was passed on to his descendants for several generations. Later, the name Bagley was adopted by the family, as it was the site of their main property. There were as many as 600 Motte and Bailey castles in England during the Norman conquest. They were like the aircraft carriers of their day. William sent his men abroad and they would build these Motte and Bailey castles. From places like Watch Hill, they would send out the fighter jets, the cavalry. Men on horseback could patrol a 30-mile radius in a day. Daily patrols and hunting parties established the Norman presence. The Normans were saying, "We're here," and a domineering structure like a Motte and Bailey castle said it loudly. So we have a boundary stone here, and it says S on one side, and apparently C on the other. Let's have a look. Ah, yes it is. C. Psst. Hey, bud. You wanna buy a C? So I read that this stone, this boundary stone, is marking the edge of the Stamford estate. And so I'm assuming the S is Stamford, but what does the C stand for? I don't know, haven't found out yet. Maybe I'll find out before this video is over, but at this moment in time, I don't know what S and C stand for. I'm assuming S is for Stamford. Most of the Motte and Bailey castles like Watch Hill have long since rotted away. Some were rebuilt in stone and became part of a bigger castle complex. Get out and check it out. It's a lovely spot, and although there's not much to see, now you know what to look for. If you want to learn more about this fascinating period of history, check out this book by Mark Morris, or any of his work. You can also find him on YouTube. It's a beautiful view from up here. Imagine 1,000 years ago. It's crazy. There would have been hundreds of these Motte and Bailey castles all over the country, and this one was probably owned by Hacienda de Massey, or his son anyway, or someone from his crew, and he had de Massey, Dunham Massey, we know that name. And there was one believed to be at the pond there at Dunham Massey. There was believed to be another Motte and Bailey castle. So there would have been hundreds of these. I think as many as 600, I think, of these Motte and Bailey castles. And they would, this was kind of a temporary setup built from wood and dirt. And they'd build this first, and then later they would do a proper castle out of stone. But not always necessary, so I guess they at some point decided that this piece of land was better defended from somewhere else, although I don't know how it could be better defended from somewhere else. But I guess if you owned all this land, you didn't need to worry about it. At that point in time, back at the beginning of the Norman conquest, they were dealing with a different thing. They were dealing with local rabble rather than the big bad guys. So they probably didn't need a big defense here afterwards, and wasn't necessary to build a huge fortification here after all the locals got in line